What up, guys? In this video I want to talk about why I believe men should stop falling in love with women but need to learn to love women from a different type of perspective. You know, I think that a lot of men, their goal is to get a sense of reward from a relationship, from affection, from like connection and being attached to the woman. But I think that if you want to love something and lead them well, you have to actually be detached. And I know that sounds wrong. When I say detached, I'm not talking about, you know, being like a player. I'm not talking about like that, like not caring about a woman's feeling. I'm saying we need to learn how to love women, but also be detached. So for me, I used to get a lot of my sense of reward with women from the emotional connection and affection side, and them validating me as a person. You know, I felt like, oh, if they text me back, you know, I feel amazing. But when they don't text me back, when they get inconsistent and stop texting me back, then I feel terrible. You know, it was always about the results based off how they're acting and me wanting to feel validated. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like, you know, I would be fantasizing about them being my girlfriend and just wanting to be in love, right? But I feel like this is wrong. Like, you gotta switch your mindset, because as a man, we have to be the leader, right? Like, even in the Bible, it says love your wife, but it also says that we gotta be the leader. So I feel like in order to lead, you have to be detached. So I'm trying to say, switch your reward system around women to be actually, you get a sense of reward if you're leading well, if you're staying emotionally controlled, right? Like, you have to make it like that. So for example, you know, let's say a woman's texting you and then all of a sudden she just goes inconsistent and doesn't text you back for like 1 week, or is texting you every 3 days, right? My old way of responding would be like, oh my gosh, she's not texting me back. Like, the emotional connection is gone between her and I. So that would bother me and bum me the heck out. But now I see it differently. Now I look at my reward system is like, okay, am I keeping my cool? Am I maintaining emotional control? If she's not texting me back for 3 days, I feel accomplished when I'm not panicking. You know, I pat myself on the back for not panicking when she hasn't texted back for 3 days. It's like, you know what I'm saying? It's a mindset shift. So now I'm like, well, I don't really care if she didn't text back for 3 days, because that's not where my reward system comes from. My sense of reward comes from me staying in control of what I can control, right? And I feel like that's like a big difference, you know, because women are going to be inconsistent. So you got to get your sense of reward from how you handle things, not from the emotional affection when she gives you affection or not. Like, your sense of reward should come from you being a strong masculine leader, not because, like, affection is good. Okay, that's a byproduct, right? If a girl wants to kiss you or do romantic dates in a park or whatever, okay, that's a byproduct. But like, ultimately, you have to not care as much about getting affection. You have to care about being a leader, right? So another example of this would be like, let's say, you know, you have a test at school you gotta study for, right? And the woman asks you to hang out. So my old way would be like, dang, I don't want to miss out hanging out with the girl, right? You know, because I'm going for affection. That's what I wanted, the emotional connection. But the new way that I'm trying to teach you guys is that your job is to pass that test. So you're not going to hang out with her. You're going to go home and you're going to study for that test. And that makes you a strong leader, because as a man, you're supposed to get your responsibilities done before you hang out with girls.
Great.
So I'm going to get more reward internally for me going home and focusing on the test that I have to study for than I would get from the affection and emotional connection that I would get from going to hang out with the girl. So I think like a lot of dudes misinterpret like loving women. I don't think it's necessarily an emotional thing. It can be, but that's like secondary. Your first job is to be detached and to do what needs to be done, right? I even heard when it comes to trading stocks, the best traders are the ones that aren't emotionally attached to the trade. They follow the rules because they know what needs to be done, right? So in the same way, you don't give women what feels good in that moment. You have to do what needs to be done, right? So you gotta get your reward system more from being a leader and being centered around your own life. Because when you try to fall in love, you're just getting so attached to her that you can no longer be a leader. So that's why you want to love women, but you got to do it detached. You know, you got to be process oriented, not necessarily results oriented. A man who focuses on the process of being a good leader doesn't get too attached, and ultimately that makes him a good provider, right? Because as a man, you can't be getting attached to everybody else's emotions, or you're going to end up whirlwinding into other people's problems. Like if a woman starts saying, you know, I feel like this is how a lot of husbands and stuff, it's their downfall. Like, you know, toxic women will be like causing problems on purpose, and the man thinks that there's actually a problem. So he starts getting wrapped up in her. He tries to, you know, change his behavior, but then that's not good enough. So she switches the goalpost, and then he tries to change his behavior again. He's getting wrapped up in her emotions. But a regular man, a man that's focused on centering his life around being solid and having other people's emotions orbit around his truth, not the other way around. He's not conforming his truth to other people's emotions. He would know, okay, the girl is being emotional today. I'm not going to get wrapped up in it. I'm just going to go and do something else until she changes, until her emotions change, right? Hold on. So I think that, yeah, you need to get your reward from being a leader and being controlled in your emotions. And then your secondary reward is the affection and connection that you get with women, because that is like a drug. You don't want to take it too far, because then you end up losing your grip, right? It's even like dudes who start dating a woman and they stop going to the gym. They stop going to the gym, they stop dressing up, they start leaving their house in pajamas because they already got a girlfriend. So they don't need to dress up anymore. They don't need to hit the gym anymore. That is a dude who got way too involved in the woman, in connection. They want to sit at home on the couch and watch Netflix because it feels good to touch their girlfriend. They think it feels good to cuddle. So they're all caught up in it like a drug. But they stopped focusing on what's solid in them. Their routine of hitting the gym, you know, their routine of dressing up. You know, you got to focus on your principles first and get your reward system from that as your primary sense of reward. I hope that makes sense. I used to think that being detached from women meant that it was like psychopathic or like wrong. But I think in order to be smart, you have to be detached. You have to look at things from a secondary perspective, right? Or from an outside perspective. That's what the leader does. The leader isn't necessarily involved in every conversation. The leader can sit back and watches and then takes count of all the factors. He's not necessarily involved. He's detached. He has a step back, and then he's watching the playing field, seeing what's going on. If you're too into the emotional attachment part, you're gonna fall into like a woman's presence, like you're a drug addict. You just want that dopamine high. So step outside of that and live by rules and principles. All right. And I can almost guarantee, I believe that this is what women actually want. They feel loved, more loved when we're detached, because then we can lead and then they feel safe. Right? All right. So stop falling in love with women. Just love women from a detached, rule-based way. All right, peace. Look, like I had a family member, and his wife really wanted to buy new couches for the living room, right? And he makes the majority of the money, so he was hesitant at first, right? And he did, I believe he did end up buying the couches for his wife, but he didn't do it without careful consideration of all their finances, right? So first he had to look at what needs to be done. At first I believe he said no, that's the story I remember, for like a while, and then he gave in. But when he gave in, it wasn't weak. It wasn't a weakness. He had considered it strongly, looked into all their finances, and then they went ahead and bought those expensive couches or whatever for the living room. But it was something that was built off his own principles. He had to do the math first, And don't get me wrong, I don't think that you can't just be emotionally untactful about it. I think that's a big thing. Like, if you're gonna follow your own rules, sometimes you gotta give in. Like, there's been times where it's gonna look untactful. Like, for example, let's say that, you don't eat junk food, right? But a woman cooked you food and it's junk food. Okay, take a bite of it, and go throw away the rest. Like, you gotta be emotionally tactful to some extent. Like, I don't think women like men who just throw rules at them all the time, because it's gonna hurt their feelings too bad. So you gotta balance it. But yeah.